Hello, Augies Worldwide. I'm Dave Kassler, amateur radio call sign KE0OG, here with another episode of Ask Dave. And what I have been asked about is roiling the waters in amateur radio, I think unfairly. It's a petition put together by a consortium, and the petition is RM, which stands for rulemaking, but it's not a proposed rulemaking. It is strictly a rulemaking, and the number is 11953. Okay, and what this is a group of people who want to absolutely destroy HF radio. No, that's not true. It's a group of people who want to set up a system that they've been using for a few years, and now they want to make it formal, part of the rules. Right now they've been doing it under experimental licenses. And I think there is more heat than light out there in the YouTube sphere and in bulletin boards and Facebook and, oh, heaven knows, written on the moon, than there should be on this. So let's look at what the RM actually talks about and what's going on here and what these sinister forces are that are behind it. Okay, let's dive into some charts. This is the FCC logo looking like Pac-Man about to eat RM-11953. Let's talk about what it is. A high-frequency trading coalition wants to formalize what they've been doing experimentally for several years already. There's lots of unwarranted doom and gloom in amateur circles. Again, emphasize they've been doing this for a while. We'll look at the background and what they're really trying to do and how this will impact, or not, the amateur HF bands. And we need to really understand this and what's driving it. We need some vocabulary. The first piece of vocabulary we need is a market maker. You're getting a crash course in how the stock market works. Okay, first, very important to understand that the market is no longer the New York Stock Exchange or whatever. It is a global system. London, Hong Kong, Malaysia, Singapore, all these places have stock markets and they're all hooked together. So it is possible to buy stock on one market and sell it on another, which under certain circumstances, which I will show you here, can be very beneficial to the person doing the selling. So it's a firm or individual. Market maker is a firm or individual who actively quotes two-sided markets, meaning a buy market and a sell market in a particular security, often all of them, providing bids and offers, or a sell price and a buy price, along with the market size of each. For example, a market maker might say, I've got 5 million shares of IBM at $125.00025 per share. Okay, and that's what they'll sell it at. They'll buy it at a lower price, of course, because a market maker needs to make money in order to stay in business. Let's talk just a little bit about market makers. They exist in every market, whether London, Singapore, whatever, at the very inside core of the market. People or institutions like your pension fund or your 401k holder, whatever, people or institutions want to buy, a market maker will sell. And vice versa. If they want to sell, a market maker will buy. The prices are determined by supply and demand and can fluctuate very rapidly. Now, a market maker must make a profit or they will disappear. This has happened, but not very often, because these market makers are very savvy people and will buy and sell stocks just as quickly as they can. Next vocabulary term, arbitrage. the simultaneous purchase and sale of the same asset in different markets in order to profit from tiny differences in the asset's listed price. Remember, there are markets all over the world that kind of act as one great big giant organism. Think of an elephant lumbering along while a fox runs on ahead. These markets will do the buy and sell. The market makers in those markets will do their thing. But communications is not instantaneous, and so people have the ability to arbitrage. Let's take a look at what that really means. For example, the euro, which is the European currency, is $1.12.005 in London, at the same time that the euro is 1.12013 in New York. So what arbitrageurs do is buy euros in London and sell them in New York before the price can change. The only way you can do is be the first one there. You have to do it quickly, and I'm talking microseconds before word reaches other traders of the price discrepancy. This is the fundamental mechanism that drives the need for nearly instantaneous information. In other words, through HF, or high frequency. Because when you talk into your microphone in New York and Ham is listening to you in Paris, it's as instantaneous as the speed of light can be. There's no processing delay unless you're using a software-defined radio. Now, the normal system of exchanging information between exchanges is slower. I'm talking in the millisecond region. And this is fiber optic cable. Okay? Now, let's go ahead with our last definition, high-frequency trading. Using powerful computer programs to transact a large number of orders in fractions of a second. Okay? So it's not done by people. It's done by algorithms that are created by very highly paid physicists and engineers and computer programmers who have put this stuff together on behalf of whatever company they're waiting for or working for. So high-frequency trading, it depends on arbitrage. There have to be slight differences inherent in our global financial exchange network. Okay, as I showed with the euro. The market maker, meaning the person who buys or sells what these people want to sell or buy, needs to be nearly instantaneous, which is why it's often done all in a computer in New York. If you go to New York, they've got fibers that they actually bring onshore and all the way into buildings owned by the stock market to computers that the stock market maker uses, and huddled right around these are computers used by the traders themselves. If they have to move their equipment to a different floor, that adds microseconds to how quickly the information can get there. Okay, this is a big deal. It goes on behind the scenes. Here's the fundamental thing. He who gets there first wins. The trade itself will tend to eliminate the arbitrage, because if you start buying something, the price of it's going to start to go up because there's more demand. So that will eliminate the arbitrage. This is why the consortium behind RM-11953 wants HF communications. It travels at the speed of light and air, which is very near C, which is the speed of light in a vacuum, whereas fiber optic cable has a slower propagation velocity. Now, you may not think that matters, but when you've got a cable stretched from New York to London, it can matter. There will be a time difference. Okay, now let's get into some of the details about what's going on. Some things to note. The proposed HF communication system is already in use under experimental licenses and has been for a few years. The purpose of the proposed RM is to formalize this in the FCC rules because they have been operating using experimental licenses from the FCC. Now, the frequencies that you read in the RM are the ones they have already been using. Now, note that formalization may add more frequencies, okay? They're wanting to get themselves a little more wiggle room. Now, one of the things that they have to prove to the FCC is that there is a public benefit to what they're doing. The notice, or the RM, says that the public benefit is manifestly apparent. In other words, they're not going to talk about it, they're just going to claim it. I say that's baloney. High-frequency trading benefits only the people who are doing it. Going after arbitrage opportunities is basically like in Las Vegas when you're skimming from the gambling tables. And it does not help Mr. Everyman's finances. It only benefits those who are doing the high-frequency trading. It just allows members of the consortium the ability to play arbitrage more quickly, and thus they beat others doing the same thing but a millisecond behind. The consortium also fails to show the public harm that would occur if the filing were rejected. Gee, all the high-frequency traders would have to use the same handicap. Oh my, what a terrible thing. So let's look at the consortium versus ham radio. The consortium wants effective communications in the worst case, like all commercial providers. But ham radio operators like to exploit the best cases, like, for example, communications working when it normally doesn't, such as digging a rare CW or FT8DX station out of the noise on 20 meters. We are interested what we can do when all the forces in the universe line up for us. And what they're interested in doing is having effective communications when all the forces in the universe line up against them. Now, they're not going to be able to beat things like geomagnetic storms and so on. They're proposing to limit the output to 20 kilowatts, and that won't get through a geomagnetic storm. Now, I want to take a look at the experimental equipment that they're using right now. You might recognize some of the names here. First, the radio equipment is from a company called Trellisware, and it's the model TW6210, which is not on the Trellisware website. Now, you see that word trellis? Trellis is something you grow flowers on, right? Actually, in this case, it is a reference to something called trellis decoding. It's an extremely sophisticated, computer-intensive way of figuring out what was sent by looking at, if you get a bit, you can say, well, it's got 65% probability that it's a 1 and a 35% probability that's a 0. So you'll just hold the probabilities there. Then you start working your way down the trellis as you get information, and eventually you make a decision whether that bit is a 1 or a 0. It's very sophisticated. I studied this when I was doing my master's work. It is what NASA uses to decode the signals that come from deep space. At the time those satellites were operated, we had the compute power to do about 7 levels of trellis decoding. Now we have the compute power to do many, many more levels. Trellisware also makes modulation techniques. So it's like they could make something we might call PK PSK31 or something like that. They've got a whole bunch of proprietary modulation techniques that they use on either ends of these things to help assure that the signal will get through. Now, ACOM is an amplifier organization. They make large HF amplifiers, which are perfectly available to amateur radio operators. It's the same ACOM. They're making here an amplifier that will get them up to their 20 kilowatts. TCI is an organization that makes very exotic filters for high power operations. And so TCI is the one that's setting their, it's their low pass, high pass, notch filters, all these kinds of things are made by TCI. Rohde & Schwarz is a consulting company and makes test equipment, and they're known in the ham radio world. They occasionally appear in QST for some new award they've gotten from somebody. And Step IR makes antennas that can change frequency fairly quickly. And there's custom software made by the Consortium. Now, how does this work? It says between 2 and 25 megahertz. It operates, and I'm going to say this is a loose association, sort of like automatic link establishment that our emergency responders are used to here. The system is constantly looking for the best frequency. They're not using ALE per se, but they're using something that kind of does the same thing. They're always looking for the best frequency. Let's look at some details. They've got a 20 kilowatt transmitter, 10 kilohertz to 50 kilohertz bandwidth. Note that greatly reduces the power to bandwidth ratio. The wider the bandwidth, the better their signal is going to be received, but the amount of signal in any given dB hertz is going to be lower. Now, the ratio of 20 kilowatts, just assuming modulation techniques are equal, ratio of 20 kilowatts to our maximum amateur 1.5 kilowatts is 11.25 dB, or 2 S units. Okay, how many times have you used your radio to try and pick out a signal that's S7 when there's a nearby S9 signal? The answer, we do it all the time. Now, they are using what they call and I've never seen this word, a genericized 10 dBi antenna. Now, they say in another place it's a log periodic, which would be about the gain of log periodic. It has significant back lobes and side lobes. This is in fixed service, so it's going to be looking from one point to another all the time. The interference detection for the system is in band only. They claim a minus 35 dBm out of band, a minus 35 dB out of band QRM is okay. They claim that. And minus 50 dB, I need to take the M's out of there, would eliminate all of the out-of-band interference. Well, I should go for the 50. Now, this is an important thing. They have not measured spurious emissions in the ham bands. Remember that transmitters not only put out harmonics, but can put out phase noise, spurious things, and all kinds of stuff. And if there's a nonlinearity in the amplifier's transfer function, you can create additional harmonics that could be out of your local band, but not terribly far away. Now, they have attached to the RM a so-called coexistence report, how they're going to deal with other services and so on. The coexistence report is based entirely on VOACAP simulations. VOA is Voice of America, and this is their analysis program that tells them what propagation is going to be like. So they claim a lot of operational experience, a couple years, but they don't talk about how their operational experience verifies their coexistence report. Let's look at potential harm to ham radio. The first one is fundamental overload. You have a transmitter near you that's so powerful that it actually just captures your radio. That's not likely, as ham radio roofing filters are designed to block out out-of-band QRM, and the modern radios have these things. You can also use certain products that will tune that out. You can use a receive antenna that will put a notch right over the area when you turn it just right. Now, the other possibility is phase noise. All modern radios produce some level of phase noise. This is the voltage-controlled oscillator trying to keep up with the reference signal, and it's constantly weaving back and forth a little bit. So you get a little tiny bit of phase noise. Modern transmitters, it's not very much, but it is a definite possibility if it gets into the ham band. I know at field day, I've listened on one radio while one of our other stations transmits on the same band. What is killing our being able to use the same band is the phase noise from the first transmitter. We are close enough, 100 feet, that it just swamps the receiver. Now, TCI creates filters to reduce this, but this phase noise will add to the overall background noise pollution, just like any other service, plus other QRM sources. They all create part of the background noise pollution. Now, harmonics, getting into a ham band is not likely due to the TCI filters. They're robust, they're big, they're expensive. These guys can afford anything, remember. Okay, they're definitely part of the 1%. Now, here's my last chart. Should we freak out? No. There's been no harm to ham radio from the experiments they've been doing for the last couple of years. And fundamentally, what they want the RM to do is formalize what they've already been doing experimentally. They want to keep doing what they've been doing. No deleterious effects on ham radio have been noted. Now, if you want my opinion on this, to me, the whole thing smacks of greed. Those involved want a microsecond advantage over other people scraping millions. I would use the word skimming millions off the top of the market through arbitrage. I don't see the public benefit unless the public consists of the 1%. And I'm certainly not part of that. Now, regarding the formalities here, you may comment using the FCC comment system until the 31st of July, which is almost 2 weeks away. Okay? Please make your arguments cogently, very easy to understand, and calmly, and don't catastrophize. Okay? It's another radio service. We've already seen it in action. It's not been an issue. It's not going to be an issue for us. So there you have it. We've taken a look at what's in the rulemaking, plus we've taken a deep dive into what's underneath it. Now, some people are saying that anybody else using HF is going to ruin ham radio. The FCC has no sympathy for that point of view because they have this entire HF spectrum to mind, and they want to see it used in the public good, okay? Whether that's shortwave broadcasting or people communicating point to point or making phone calls to Vanuatu or something like that. I know I've mispronounced that. The point is that they want to fill up HF. And this is a user that has already demonstrated that they can use this spectrum to make money for themselves. Okay? I personally don't see the public good here, but the FCC probably will. Now, will this result in Armageddon for ham radio? No. And the people who say it is, I'm sorry, they're freaking out over something they don't need to freak out over. There are other things that we should freak out about, the bad behavior on the air and stuff like that. But this is not one of them, okay? That's my considered opinion based on my technical background and also my dislike for those who are skimming money off the market and making my 401k go down. So, there you have it. If you liked this video, please click like, subscribe, and share with other people. And if you would like to help support this channel financially directly, you can do it via a comment where you have the ability to add the price of a cup of coffee to that, even though I don't drink coffee. But also, if you go to dcasler.com/support, you'll find several ways, including Patreon, to support this channel. We've got to keep ham radio going until we next meet. 73.